watch me get an instant email report showing every task of mine which is in progress straight from my project manager. And boom, as you can see, I just received a task report. It's subjected weekly actions report. Hi Peter, here's a list of actions in progress. And this is actually the task report. You can see it says in progress actions. The title is video ads, new website, 2 assignees, as well as a start date, as well as a end date. There we go. And what's awesome about this is that if you match it to what's happening in my project manager, which is Hive, you can see on the left hand side that this is matching what is on the right hand side. So you can see here that the titles are the same, video ads as well as new websites, website as well as video ads. Then you can also see that there's also the assignees here, the start date as well as the end date. You can also notice in my task report that I'm only getting in progress actions. I'm not getting the actions which are completed and the actions that are unstarted. I'm only getting the in progress actions. Great stuff. This is such a game-changing automation, and I'm going to show you exactly how to build this using Hive Automate. Hi, my name is Peter from Connex Digital. We are an automations and integrations company that specializes in Hive Automate integrations. If you're interested in working with us, please be sure to book a free discovery call with us. If you want more information, please check the links down below in the description of this video. Without further ado, let me show you how you can build this Hive Automate integration. Alright, awesome. So let's get into it. As I stated at the beginning of this video, the integration platform that we'll be using to build this automation is Hive Automate, and we'll be using this workflow in order to build it. So without further ado, let's get into it. The first step is a trigger action. And as you can see, this is for demonstration purposes, but I set the trigger for every week at 6 a.m. on a Monday. And according to your preferences and according to your specs, you can actually set this yourself. In order for you to do this, you'll just scroll down below, and as you can see, there are things like time unit, trigger every, days of the week, as well as trigger at. So you can see that you can actually set your time unit. You can also set the schedule as you require. You can see here that it's also days of the week, so you can include more days in terms of the trigger of this automation, and then you can also trigger the time as per your requirements. Awesome stuff. So essentially the first step is going to trigger the entire workflow and then lead to the other actions. Now once the trigger has been fired, then we go to the next actions. So you can see that this action over here is number 2, and so it's titled Get Actions in Hive. And essentially what are we doing here? What we're doing is that we're getting all the actions that exist in a particular project in Hive. So you can see here that the method is get, and it says here select HTTP method of the request. And then we're also putting a path over here. So this is going to be an API call that we make in order to get all the actions that are listed in a particular project in Hive. You can also see that the response type is JSON response. And then we have the request URL parameters, and then you can see that under project ID, we've also listed the project over here. And so this is taking the exact project that you saw at the beginning of this video, and we're putting it over here so we can only filter and get the actions that exist in that particular project. Remember, there's many projects that you can play around with, and there's many projects that you can actually create in Hive. And so it's important to just filter it according to that specific project and then get the actions from there. You can also see with the response body that these are the required fields that are going to come in terms of the response body. Awesome stuff. Once we're done with this action, then it's time to go to the next action. And so the next action is number 3, and you can see it's called create variable report. Now this is very exciting. This is very unique. Why? Because we're actually creating the table structure. We're creating the table format that is going to show in the email output. And so this is how we are creating now the table, and we're creating the style, we're creating the format, we're creating the colors, we're creating everything that you're going to see within the email once it is sent out. So you can see below report that this is the HTML data that we are using, and essentially this is how we are going to create the table where also the fields are going to be in the table when it comes to the assignee, when it comes to the actual action, when it comes to the start date, the end date. We're actually creating now the table using HTML. Great stuff. Once we're done doing that, then we go to the next step. And so if we select over here, this is the next step. So you can see what we're doing here is that under input list, we're putting the array which is coming from step number 2. And so we are mapping this over here, and then you can see that the repeat mode is one item at a time. And then it says here, when set to batch of items, the input list is repeated in batches of a specified size. Great stuff. And so we're just making sure that every single action is being processed accordingly. Once we're done with this action, we're going to go to the next action. So we're going to select over here, and this is action number 5. And so what are we doing here? Well, we've included an if functionality. And so essentially, there are many actions that also exist within the project. As you saw at the beginning, there's things like completed or uncompleted or in progress. And so we only want to get the actions that are in progress. We want to filter the actions that are in progress. And this is why this step over here is important. You can see that the data field is step number 4. So we're mapping this section over here. And then the condition is equals, and the value is what? In progress. And so what are we doing now? We're getting all the actions from the particular project, and then we're filtering them according to the in progress actions. Those are the only actions that we want to use. And once we have that, then later on we can then populate those specific actions into the table. And so that is why this action over here is essential. Once we're done with this action, then we go to the next part. So the next part is get details of a specific user in Hive. And I'm just going to read this part for us. It says retrieve the details of a specific user via its Hive ID. Select the object type to retrieve the details of, then provide its user ID. So you can see under object, it says user, and then under user ID, we have this section over here. And what are we doing? We are just getting the assignees of those particular actions within the project. So we want to get the people or the persons that are responsible for each action, so that when we get this information, then we can also put it into the table later on. And so that is what we are doing here in this action. Once you're done with this action, then we go to the next step, which is create variables start date and end date. And so now we are just transforming the data so that we can get the start date and the end date of each action. And so you can see that we have the start date over here, and we also have the end date. And we've also included from step number 4, the scheduled date. And then here we've also included the deadline. And we're also making sure that it is formatted in the correct way. And once we get the correct format, we'll get this over here, and then we'll use this later on when we're putting this information under the start date as well as the end date of the actions. Then we go to the second last step. The second last step is update variables report. And so what are we doing here? What we're doing here is that, remember, we already created the report using HTML. Now what we're trying to do is every single information that we are getting, we are now populating that into the table report. So as you can see here, it has full name, it has start date, it has end date. So all the information that we managed to get from the previous steps, we're getting that information, and then now we're inserting it into the table format. The other step was just creating the table structure, but now we are just putting now the fields into the table, and that is why this step over here is essential. You can see that we've also included some HTML data in order to make sure that it is formatted and put together in the right way. My apologies guys, but that actually wasn't the second last step. This was actually the second last step. Once we're done with this step over here, then we go to the second last step, which is update variables report. And so what we're doing here is that we're just closing the table structure. Remember, we put the table together, we also put the fields within the table. And so this here through HTML is now just closing the table structure. So everything here is going to be enclosed and it's going to be included, and we're going to have a table which is ready to use within our email. So that's what we're doing over here. We're just closing the table structure. Once we're done with that, then we go to the last step, which is send email via Wakato. So you can see that 2 is peter@connex.digital. So this is who you're sending the email to. And then the subject is weekly actions report. Then you can see that the email type is HTML. Why are we doing this? Because we created everything using HTML. Then you can see that the message is, hi Peter, here's the list of actions in progress. And then over here, we're mapping step number 3, and we are mapping the report that we have actually created with also the fields. And once we're done with that, then we are done with this action over here. And essentially, this is how you can build this amazing Hive Automate automation. We have successfully completed this workflow. If this is something of interest and it's something that you want us to help you build, then we'll be more than happy to assist you with this integration. Just make sure that you book a free discovery call with us. If you want more information, please check the links down below in the description of this video. If you want to check us out and see what we're up to and check out the insights that we have at Connex, then you can visit our website, which is connex.digital. If you like this video, please be sure to give us a thumbs up and also comment down below what actually stood out for you. Please be sure to also watch all the videos that are part of the Connex channel and also subscribe to our channel so that we can actually give you more valuable content. I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.